In a classroom full of a small 8-year-old boy suddenly walked in. Except for this boy brimming with confidence, I accept the challenge. His teacher, a simple after-class assignment, and he turned it into. The teacher scolded him for going off topic and lacking scientific basis. The teacher was furious again, and even wearing, the whole class burst out laughing. No one would have guessed that this genius boy was, because he had a lively, adorable younger brother, especially in their dad's eyes. While Leighton was just like him, a natural-born cowboy, until one day in the bar, his brother was playing with a rifle when it misfired. After, no one ever blamed T.S. for it, as if he never existed. But Spivot could feel it deeply. The house had grown colder. His already distant father became even more silent. His mother buried, desperate to numb her grief through work. His sister still ignored him. All of it weighed heavily on the sensitive T.S. to express his sorrow, so he threw himself. One day, he got a call from a prestigious science society. They invited him to attend the award ceremony in Washington, D.C. Who scoffed and said he was lying. He was crushed. He figured his parents would react the same way, especially after he carefully built a 3D model to help fix the farm's water problem. That confirmed it, even if he wanted, but he longed to connect with brilliant scientists. So in a storm of he decided to travel alone to Washington, across the country. That night, he then packed all his tools in secret, 8 pairs of underwear, 3 a thermometer, a hygrometer. Once everything, he dragged his heavy suitcase downstairs. But standing there for he first went to his brother's room. A wave of sorrow flooded over him. Run away for a while. To Washington, D.C. I'll bring you back a souvenir. I'm sorry for what I did. Then he quietly said goodbye to everyone else. Dear family, I'm off to do some work. Don't worry. I didn't want to bother you by telling you ahead of time. Thank you for taking care of me. You are one of the best families. Love, T.S. Before leaving, to keep from feeling lonely on the road, the morning air carried a crisp and refreshing. His small figure, dragging a giant suitcase. He hadn't, when his father's truck pulled up behind him, T.S. But the truck simply drove right past him, T.S. He thought this was his father's punishment. Because I was responsible for his favor, I knew I had to be banished from the ranch. That's why. I painted the train signal. The train came to a full stop. Before the engine, he quickly loaded his suitcase on board. But just as he was about to climb up, a patrolling officer, he tried to hide under the train. But it started moving. Knowing he couldn't wait any longer, he crawled out and scrambled onto a conveyor machine. And just like that, T.S. he saw countless mountains and rivers and creatures. The world he had only known from books and television came alive before him, as though his heart had grown. But the police were already on alert, searching every. T.S. panicked and hid inside a trailer being shipped. But a drip from his nose nearly gave him away. Fortunately, the train's whistle blew just. T.S. escaped trouble once again. Home grew farther. On the way, he met a strange old man. Once, a sparrow was freezing in the winter. Only the pine tree offered to shelter him from the wind. This moved the Creator, who punished the other trees to shed their leaves every winter. The old man wanted to teach T.S., but T.S. coldly replied that the story was fake. But pine needles have no real insulating properties. They couldn't possibly form a warm cocoon for a bird the size of a sparrow. Your grandmother lied to you. T.S., who had lacked love since childhood, had grown used to analyzing the world with logic. He hadn't eaten in, but just then, two cops with a missing child flyer walked up. Luckily, his new, but the hot dog stand girl saw through him right away. I know someone who ain't gone. Come on. Just kidding, young man. Eat your hot dog now, or you won't be hungry for Jeff's soup later. I don't have a mother. My parents are dead. This was the first time T.S. ever told. Hello. Hello, T.S. You've been connected. Oh, thank God. Where are you? Oh, baby. You know what? You were right. I've been wasting my time chasing the wrong sun. You were spot on about the culvert, so what do you say? I loved every bit of it. He even said you'd make my Halloween costume. Come home, baby. But in truth, T.S. never made that call, one that no matter how close they were, they could never And with that thought, T.S. he deeply envied kids who didn't have to travel and all those glowing homes filled. He was just a 10-year-old child, but he already knew and the pain of drifting on your own. T.S. as he looked through those familiar photos, and as he kept reading, he began to understand her. It turned out his mother wasn't so cold after all, only to fall into silence and sorrow moments later, and wanted to talk to him but never knew how to begin. She even wondered if he still loved. He'd rather play alone on the seesaw, and never came. But the more he read, the more those empty spaces inside him began to, and eventually, full of anticipation, he arrived at that cold. The rest he carefully stashed away. When he reached a drawbridge, the officer's final, it looked like there was nowhere left to, but then, the next second, hey, okay, hang on. Shoot this, Christ. Get your foot up, come on. Get your foot up, you can do it. You can pull up the, Though T.S. narrowly made it across several of his ribs, the pain was excruciating, but none of the passing cars. Just as he was about to collapse, a big rig pulled. Where you headed, kid? To the Smithsonian. Where? D.C., in Washington, man. The driver waved and even reminded him to buckle up. But T.S. the driver figured his ribs were broken, but T.S. was terrified they'd turn him into the police. The driver loved taking. He took a picture of everyone who ever hitched a ride with him. It turned the small driver's cabin into a mini cinema, filled with slices of, while T.S. was sleeping. Where are we? Not far now from your destination. And there it was, the majestic Smithsonian Institute. I'm not sure what you're looking for, but don't change a thing, those boots suit you. But I'm sure you'll find your place. The whole building was filled with an artistic aura. It made T.S. even, but when they realized the rumored genius was just a child, still, out of politeness, he thought it was a joke too. After all, even the brightest minds were baffled. How could something like that come from a child? You expect me to believe you invented that? Not really. I didn't invent anything. I just transposed a principle, an electron orbiting the nucleus. But to achieve true perpetual motion, you'd have to create negative entropy, which, as we know, is impossible. You'd agree with that, right? The deputy director stared. It was like discovering a once-in-a-century treasure. He immediately took TS to see a doctor. The whole process felt so much so that TS imagined seeing his late brother. That hit TS. But if he wanted to achieve something great with their help, the test results showed TS's brain was far. He could even rest and stay mentally active at the same time like a dolphin. So he dressed TS up like an adult. Guests at the banquet soon swarmed, as if admiring a priceless artifact. In a fake smile, only the zygomatic muscles move. In a genuine one, the muscles around the eyes contract unconsciously. Tonight, it was all zygomatic. Soon, TS was invited to give a speech. His heart pounding, it felt like time had slowed down. What sparkled now wasn't their knowledge, but the jewelry. The entire hall was terrifyingly silent. TS finally, he said most people here were at least postdocs, while he was just a grade schooler, so he'd talk about just 3 things. That no one here cancelled his award just because he was a child. It wasn't a true perpetual motion because many of its parts are made with magnets. Probably after 400 years, it would lose its magnetism and stop spinning. On a human scale, that sounds so we're still far from achieving true perpetual motion. His tone was steady and clear. They all knew that right now. No one could create a real perpetual motion machine. And as for his third point, TS said the real reason he came was to try and save his broken family. He shot himself in the barn. No one talked about it. No one ever said, Leighton shot himself in the barn. No one. Leighton and I, we were always so different. I'd be doing science experiments, and he'd be shooting tin cans and coyotes with his Winchester. So I came up with an idea: map sound waves from gunshots. That way, he would shoot, and I'd gather the data. And then, one of his Winchesters jammed. I held the barrel to help him fix it. I didn't even touch the trigger. Then there was an explosion. Leighton flew across the barn. He fell right into the hay. He was there, but he wasn't my brother anymore. I was alone. I went out to the field to find my dad. His face froze when I said Leighton got hurt badly. He ran back, and I just stood there, not knowing what to do. Then I ran to the house and locked myself in the bathroom. I could hear my dad whispering on the phone. Through the window, I saw the ambulance arrive without flashing lights. After a while, Gracie showed up. She was crying. She sat next to me and hugged me. We stayed like that for a long time, just lying there on the floor, not saying a word. TS's story left. No one had imagined that this child genius had suffered such a tragedy. Hoping to ease the pain, seeing the crowd's emotional reaction, the deputy director and pulled him into a hug. TS wasn't just a 1 in a million genius, but no one hidden behind the crowd. A familiar figure. It was TS's mother, trying to cash in on. The deputy director had TS pose for magazine covers. Instead, He had to endure the pain in his ribs while repeating scripted answers again and again. What they were obsessed with was to create a viral TV moment. The producer's secret, they wanted her to say something moving on camera, but for this mother watching her son speak. "So you read my journal?" "I'm sorry. It wasn't me." What about giving a child a gun as a gift? Letting two kids play with a gun in a barn, unsupervised? You think that's right. Wasn't that your fault too? It wasn't your fault. It wasn't. It wasn't anyone's fault. It was an accident. As your father said. What happened? Just happened. His brother's death had always been T.S.'s, but hearing his mother say it wasn't his bottled-up sorrow came flooding out, ignoring the fact that they were live on air, and his mother no longer wanted to so she took him and walked off the stage. But the greedy production trying to squeeze more drama from them, the deputy director ran after them to block them. Wait. Where do you think you're going? This is Copper Top Ranch. Their father didn't even look at the fallen host. Instead, he knelt down and looked T.S. in the eye. If you're okay, that's all that counts. So I'm mute. And I'm dead. Sorry, Dad. But his father never disliked T.S. It was just that he was a man of few words. His father didn't know how to connect with him. T.S. asked why. His father had a simple answer. He never even saw him. Sometimes, what we call and between father and son, their reconciliation came naturally. Stepping into the light, back at the remote little farm, every T.S. continued his experiments. Toasters still kept breaking. His dad was still away all day. His sister was still and yet, everything had changed. The love within the family flowed more freely. And his mother was once again as the big brother. T.S. invented a special kind of perpetual motion machine, a cradle rocker, to form a lullaby full, nurturing a new life to come. This isn't a fairy tale about a boy genius, nor is it a heroic tale. It's about a painful truth. One that couldn't be avoided, but slowly accepted. Even though no one spoke of him anymore, the pain and grief only young T.S. stubbornly blamed himself for a guilt too heavy for a child to bear, like a monster hiding so heavy that he couldn't face it, or not even at the peak moment of winning the Baird Prize. To him, the honor was merely a way out, a chance to escape his suffocate, so he dragged a suitcase heavier than himself onto the track stretched toward the unknown. In a daze, he seemed to see a boy in a cowboy hat sitting across from him. Through the repeated wash of longing and grief that his confused heart slowly came to realize. The destination he chased through wind and dust, and certainly wasn't the vanity of becoming. What he truly sought across thousands of miles was just an outlet, a brief moment under the spotlight to confess the truth buried, a chance to express his boundless guilt and longing to the world. When someone tried to turn his soul-bearing confession into a marketing gimmick, he was just a powerless child, unable to resist. Fortunately, the mother who once hid in the numbing her grief through research, finally broke out with a warm embrace. She helped him under. True healing begins when we dare to speak the name no one mentioned again. It begins when hidden wounds are gently touched, and we discover that forgiveness and solace They are built together upon the ruins of pain we can know. The past we try to bury never truly disappears, shaping the lives we live today. Instead of letting it ferment in the shadows, why not drag it into the sun and say a proper goodbye? Not to forget, but to understand, to be at peace, to transform that heavy love and pain, and live each day with intention. Only by facing the abyss turn around. This is You Wanding Studio. Thanks for watching.